John Murray here, Major League Fishing Pro, out trying to catch a bass. And it's one of those things that a lot of guys, that's your question. How do I catch a bass? Well, in Major League Fishing, we have to catch bass all day long or we're going home. So I've always had a good understanding of pressured bass. I grew up in Arizona. There's a lot of lakes that got a lot of pressure around Phoenix. There's like 8 lakes and there's 4 million people. And there's not much water in the desert. So those lakes got beat up a lot. And I developed a system to sort of catch fish under those conditions. I now moved to Tennessee. I live on about 15 minutes from Lake Chickamauga, which has a totally different kind of pressure. It's crazy amount of pressure on that lake. And it presents a new problem on pressured bass. But the techniques and the ideas remain the same. One thing that I've always learned about in bass is you either appeal to their, actually gonna feed or their aggressiveness. Those are the two things you appeal to. So what I do is I go with a two-prong approach. And I've always done this over the years. Now the baits have changed and a lot of the techniques have changed, but you always have the mentality of the same thing. Yeah, I go really big or I go really small. If you watch 90% of bass fishermen going down a bank, they all have pretty much the same thing, a 5, 6, 8-inch worm, a spinnerbait, a jig, the same bait you're tied on. When you go to a highly pressured place, you want to have a bait that those fish haven't seen. So my favorite are glide baits. This is the River to Sea glide bait S-Waver that started it all. And it's just a great bait for really lakes that get a lot of pressure because they don't see these big baits. Now this is the 168, they make them bigger. And I've used bigger. And really you're just judging your conditions. You have a lake that has big trout in it. We have some in Arizona where those big trout, you've got to max the size of those trout with a big bait. And those fish will only eat that bait. So in my approach to this is I go for that. I go for that big bait versus the little bait. The other thing you do with these is retrieve. An S-Waver or any of these glide baits are really made to just sort of reel in slow and they just come through the water. But one weird thing about it, there's been a lot of tournaments won on pressured lakes, taking a glide bait and ripping it through the water, reeling it as fast as it can. And you're like, there's no way. And those fish just trigger on it. So those are the retrieves and really the size of the baits are what I key on when I go out and fish pressured waters. Now the opposite end of that approach, obviously, is going small. Drop shotting is a great technique. It catches bass everywhere. I use a Texas rig. That's the first thing I do on my drop shot. I don't use an open hook much. Now my big thing with a drop shot, adjusting your leader length. Sometimes I'll go to a lake, that's my normal anywhere I'll go. But if I go to a pressured lake, I've seen it 3, 4 foot leaders on drop shots. So that worm was 5 feet off the bottom, especially on any situations you have some clear water. So the big thing for me with drop shotting, I keep it very simple. This is a Gene LaRue TATTLETAIL. I keep basic colors, basic weights, all that, but I adjust my leader length a lot. For me, a lot of drop shotting is uphill. If you watch a guy come to a point, everybody throws it up on the point, drags it off. Well, if you go to a highly pressured reservoir, you might want to just go right up on that point where they cast and then come up from a different angle. So many times that will make a difference. Any pressured lake, whether it's in Tennessee or California or Arizona, keep those things in mind and you always catch a few more fish than everybody else.